Aloha. This video, I just wanted to give a little quick update on like some of the perspectives that I have from recent events, and also share a dream and some dream interpretation stuff and whatever else comes up. I don't know. It's been a while. I've been taking a little break because it just felt natural. I've already gotten, for the new subscribers and some of the old subscribers who haven't really gone through the playlists on this channel or the catalog, there's over 800 videos on this channel now, and I feel I've pretty much like said all that I would need to say in so many different ways, up to the point to where I am right now, to where kind of pulling back and channeling my energy into something else, another kind of creative outlet, is going to be more beneficial to what's going on right now for me. And always with like summertime, it involves like getting out and being out in like nature and talking to people one-on-one or in larger settings, whatever it is. That's my main focus artistically right now, is to start stepping out into possible live events and just either having discussions with people or just kind of freestyling on whatever topics come up. So there have been a couple of people who have reached out for something like that, but the logistics need to be kind of like worked out and everything. But that's kind of where I am right now. As far as YouTube goes, it's a cool little outlet, but at the same time, it can do the same thing that something like Facebook does, which is trap you into a system or a style of expression that really does have limitations. Just like Facebook has limitations, and it's limited by the algorithms that are, pumped out by Facebook. They want you to see certain things. They promote certain things. Same thing happens with YouTube and Google owning YouTube. They're all owned and governed by the same thing. Basically, YouTube and the Facebook community, which includes Instagram and everything, these are all controlled filters. They're all controlled from the tippy top down, no different than the mainstream media. Yeah, you might have a few people here and there who share information that challenges the very system, but like I've said before in previous videos, the system has to also, the system of oppression and control and dominance and mind control has to at the same time allow you to think that you have some kind of critical engagement in what's going on, or some kind of freedom. That's why they spout out all the time freedom this and freedom that and democracy this and democracy that. It sets the tone for you to give the system the approval to oppress you, to give the system the approval to enslave you. And if you are knowingly and willingly enslaved, then you will allow the system to enslave other people or other nations or other cultures, or make them submit to whatever kind of construct that you yourself have been enslaved in, especially if you're not aware of your own enslavement. So to bring back some other perspectives in reference to what that really means and how that works, is a good way is to look at what you look up to. Look at what the system holds up at the top of its pedestal for you to worship, for you to love, for you to hold near and dear to you. So when the propaganda of democracy and so-called capitalism was pumped out through the system, the industrial age and this whole thing, all of this was designed to make you worship the way the modern so-called civilization is, as the evolutionary peak of humanity. You're talking about consciousness. If you're going to war, you have to first have a psychological consciousness that allows you to approve sending your children to war. You have to be ignorant enough to allow your children to go fight a war. You have to be ignorant enough to actually go join the military and fight a war. So this is why the information in and around the military and prison industrial complex is so swept under the rug and kept a secret, is because the system thrives off of your ignorance. It thrives off of your fear. It thrives off of you not being aware of your own power. So you are conditioned to remain powerless. You're conditioned to remain hopeless. You're conditioned to remain distracted. And you're conditioned to focus all of your energy on the so-called leaders that are promoted by the system. So here comes in all of this, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, these feminism movements, all of these, even the flat earth movement, conscious community, all of these are structures designed to very generally trap you. And from a personal perspective, an individual perspective, they're stepping stones. But if you don't know yourself, you're not going to realize that there's two different worlds at least going on where you're engaging, because if you have no sense of self, you're not going to have any sense of separation from the system of manipulation and mind control that makes its money off of making you ignorant. So that's the first step to break in order to realize who and what you are, so that you can realize that whatever it is that you are doing, or whatever community, that so-called community that you are a part of, is not who you are at the essence. It's just a challenge or a stepping stone or a rest stop for you to gather your strength, or gather your rest, or gather this information that allows you to step into the next realm, the next world, the next information stream, the next revelation, the next whatever it is that you have lined up for you to do. It involves you recognizing and being aware of where you are right now. And you cannot understand, understand, and overstand who, what, and where, and how, and why you are where you are right now, unless you've at first investigated and researched who our ancestors were, who you were before you are who you are right now. So this is why it's so critical to go into the depths of the past, the present, and the future, the soul, the mind, and the body, the conscious and the subconscious reality, because these stepping stones of yourself, which are constantly running all the time, time is not linear like we are shown. Time is mostly non-linear when you understand that consciousness is the biggest influencer of time, because consciousness is the energy or the frequency that's experiencing this so-called time. So within this time, you can see how you can get trapped in linear time with like a job, or the idea of change happening on a societal scale is only based upon voting rights, voting time frame. So nothing's really going to change in reference to the ignorance of a Donald Trump so-called presidency until like 4 years passes, or beyond that if the system wants to push it 8 years, because he wasn't elected, he was selected. This is how all this programming works, and it goes down to the very relationship that you have with time in the moment, which is the relationship that you have with the past, the present, and the future. Why something like flat earth and recognizing colonialism and the control grid as a whole is so important is because once you get rid of all of that excess baggage that's, clogging up your reality, that's keeping you from going any further than what the mainstream narrative tells you to do, or how far the mainstream narrative tells you to go, until you realize and break those chains of those limitations, like a 4-year or 8-year presidential term, until you break those chains, you'll never realize, you'll never be able to fly. You, like the you and the dream you, just the same way that you're not able to become deeply engaged in a dream if that dream still has the flavor intensity of a nightmare. You'll just run away until you face that nightmare, until you face those challenges within that dream. You'll never be able to figure out, like, own yourself in that dream. So what happens is, if you're faced with a nightmare, you either wake up and start all over again, or you'll run into another information stream or another challenge that will help you address the previous challenge that you were just at, which the challenge that you're in right now is just a reflection of that. It's just a different intensity. So we are playing with intensities in the conscious and the subconscious realm. Right now, on a collective scale, the intensity that we are realizing right now is the intensity of locking ourselves into this materialistic realm, into this materialistic consciousness that is so fearful of its own soul that it doesn't even allow itself to have a physical reality. We're not even allowing ourselves to have the depths of a soul reality because we have a fear of so-called losing the physical reality. We're not even allowing ourselves to go in between, which is to tap into the higher mind, the intellectual consciousness. We don't allow ourselves to go into that realm if we are still sucked into the physical fears, if we're still stuck into the physical, the solid state version of who we are, which is just a shrunk down version. Every time you go from the soul to the mind to the body, you're going to a frequency of yourself that is, from one perspective, less vibrant, for a purpose, which that purpose is experience. So like an apple, or apple pie, or your favorite food, whatever it is, tastes different in a dream than it does when you're awake. Time moves so slow. Your consciousness is slowed down so much that you have the ability to tune in to the flavors and what it's doing to your body, because your body is the one that's experiencing this food or this drink or whatever it is, or this relationship. It's slowed down to that. But if you are shifting yourself into a space of, well, before I go into that, let me close that out by saying that it's no different than being in a dream. When something in a dream, and it was just confirmed to me in the dream that I had this morning, the dream realm moves like an individual. The relationship that the conscious reality has with the subconscious reality when you yourself are in a dream or in a lucid dream is similar. Trying to comprehend what's going on and bring that information back is similar to an individual standing on the side of a freeway and watching the cars drive by, and each car that drives by is a story, or it's a word, or it's a lesson, or it's something that is very relevant to your dream. If your conscious reality has a close enough relationship to your subconscious self, you will be able to pick apart that traffic. You will be able to pull information from that freeway, which is yourself, your subconscious self, because living outside of time, or even having the ability to interpret what outside of time really is, allows you to see things not necessarily broken down as being very general, but being very like the general overtone of like what's happening on the control realm on this collective scale is, it's a language. It's something that can be, it's tangible, but from an individual perspective, it's easy to see how somebody can feel real hopeless. It's easy to see how somebody can feel empty and worthless and just pretty much dead already. So that's where we are. That in order for the system to control people, an individual, and on a massive scale, you have to be dead. You have to be consciously dead, Because if you're consciously dead, then you will shut down your subconscious relationship, which is your connection to the undead or the never dying or the forever alive. This is why your dreams are not at all a study in the university system. This is why you're separated from nature in order to turn that relationship into fear. You're separated from people in order to turn your subconscious everything, which is all the information that exists overall, turn that relationship into an individual materialistic thing, which is very scary. It's inherently fearful to be alone when you don't have any foundations to understand, understand, and overstand that you're never alone. So this is another tactic that's used by the system to maintain fear, control, a lack of critical thinking, and just a hopelessness that channels the energy of the individual and the collective back into the program that is based upon controlling people individually and collectively. So this is why I don't really engage too much, or I don't even pay too much attention in my expression as much as I used to the mind control program of, you know, a Donald Trump or the mainstream narrative or Alex Jones. If anything, I'll use those forms of information, or those forms of that alchemy, I'll use it to show another style of, or to show the subconscious effect that conscious programming has on the individual and the collective. So like the last compilation video that I was doing, or that I put up, that was an example of, like, somebody in the comment section said something about the editing needed to be better, and like it's disjointed and something like that, and that's a testament to, you know, how lazy people are, and how we need a lot of people need things that are gift wrapped and wrapped in this, you know, they were asking for like a narration to go with the video, when the whole video, the intent with the style is to help people think for themselves, to help. It's an entire language. That style is a language to trigger parts of your brain that you don't necessarily get triggered when you have a narrator guiding you through the thought process of whatever topics are out there. So if you have the title of a video, you have a starting point. If you have information there, you have your entire experience, and it's up to you to either comprehend that or need a babysitter or somebody to hold your hand as you walk through. You have a starting point, you have information, and you have the ending point, and you have all of these things that are saying the same thing from a different style. And if you can't piece it together, then that's nobody else's responsibility than your own. If you need somebody to hold your hand, then that's your problem. If you can't understand what's going on, kick rocks, be about your business. It's not nobody else's responsibility other than your own. So don't get mad at the creator, whoever created whatever information that was there, when you got work that you need to do for yourself. That's very fucking arrogant and egotistical to step out in that, especially when people who are creating some kind of art or information sharing, when they go through so much time and effort to create something like that. It takes a shitload of time and energy and focus and thought to put something together that is going to be received by anybody, one person, let alone a shitload of people. So, you know, this is this arrogant, lazy ass mainstream mentality that just like lives and sops. It like sits in the, like a rock in the stomach of a lot of these people who don't think for themselves. So people have a rock sitting inside of their higher mind that's holding them down, just like you would have like a rock in your stomach and you can't move, you can't. So just as much as it's no different than being able to have a conversation with somebody on a higher plane, and really not really even being able to go there with somebody else. Some people are not, you can't go there. It's not a bad thing. I mean, you might have a cool relationship with somebody that you don't really go into the deep depths with, talking with. But that's just a good example of like what the mainstream narrative or this whole entire control grid does to us individually and collectively. So this is an actual alchemy. It's a black magic that's being used. So like I said, all of this information now coming to the surface with the internet being released, and people, the consciousness of the people growing and asking more questions, and just the timing of it all. I mean, how long do you think people are not going to question the idea of make America great again? How long do you think that the mainstream narrative can ignore the broken treaties of the indigenous people, not only in the Americas, but across the world? How long do you think the ignorance of the real intent of colonialism, how long do you think that intent can be hidden? So people who are priding themselves and privileging themselves in the light of this totally destructive and empty and dead sort of so-called civilization, the people who are vesting their energy in people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, they will be sucked into that black hole. They'll be sucked into that vortex of nothingness when it starts to fall on its own. Right now, with all the information that's available, people are being given the option, the opportunity to utilize their free will to think for themselves. And like I said in previous videos, you're going to have people who will jump off of that fence. They'll no longer be riding the fence anymore, and they will think for themselves. And you will have a lot of people who will not. You will have people that will consistently give their energy away, and they have no other, that's not like they're consciously doing it. They have no other way to experience their reality. If they could, they would. Ultimately, if they could, they would. The opportunity comes from people who are in that space of realizing the fact of, if I could, I would, and now start to go into the world of, well, now what does it mean to would? What does it mean to do? What does it mean to think? What does it mean to feel? What does it mean to question? What does it mean to no longer subject yourself to fear or the mind control programs of a control grid? What does that mean? Where's the responsibility there? What are the goals that are there? See, when you get trapped in a bubble of a so-called community, you're limiting yourselves to the people who are keeping that community afloat. So this is kind of why I distance myself from the so-called flat earth community, because it inherently has a like from the mainstream perspective of it, like seeing the flat earth community as a mainstream thing, which is not that difficult. It already has its limitations. It has a ceiling. It has a space of ignorance that is very conscious in many different ways, and in many other ways it's very unconscious, and it's not like a good or a bad thing. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a way that we experience. It's the collective interpretation of what's going on is going to reflect the individual, and vice versa. And like I explained to a friend of mine just a little while ago, if the individual reflects the collective and the collective reflects the individual, and you have no anchor points or pillars or strengths or connections with your individual, meaning you don't know yourself, you're still limiting yourself to a materialistic interpretation of who you are, even like a backwards, upside down, nothingness version, like calling yourself black or calling yourself white or saying make America great again, or all this sort of everyday reality stuff that keeps you away from understanding and understanding who you are as an individual. what makes you think if that's your anchor point for that, then that's going to affect your anchor points and your pillars and your strengths for interpreting, understanding, and overstanding the collective story that's going on. So it works hand in hand. This is why it's so important to start to unveil the deeper layers of these communities, so-called communities, and not trap yourself in one or the other. Because it's no different than, you know, living out in the wilderness. There's nothing wrong with that. You can go out in the wilderness and live by yourself, and it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all affecting the all in many different ways. The thing is, if you are unaware of, if you're inclined to help your brothers and sisters that are within this experience in some kind of way, based upon your presence, your gifts, your music, your rhythm, whatever that is, then you're challenging yourselves to start to interpret the larger scale worlds that are so compartmentalized on purpose, so that you don't really allow yourself to piece the pieces together. You don't really understand the music or the rhythm, because the so-called new music or new age music, as a good example, is overshadowing or is so loud that it's completely drowning out your ancestral music, your ancestral rhythms. This is why the so-called evolutionary peak of this reality, which is the university system, the industrialized relationship that humanity has with Earth, the evolution theory, the technology, you know, worshiping the separation from nature and the Most High, or whatever, the energy of your soul, whatever that's connected to, it's just, you know, it's pushed to the side. It's swept under the rug. It's pushed, you know, in a corner somewhere, put up in a closet somewhere, in order for you to invest all of your energy in what the so-called powers that be, these mind controllers, these manipulators, these parasites, this parasitic energy, in order for that narrative to become your narrative. So if your narrative on the individual and the collective scale is a pre-packaged McDonald's drive-through narrative of this reality, you will have a shortened life, energetically and literally, in whatever that is. Like on the extremes, literally, to where people get trapped in like violence, or they kind of burn out, whatever it is. That's a literal interpretation of something happening because of the choices that were made by whoever it was, the individual and the experience overall, those individuals within that experience. But when you are aware of what's going on, you're playing a music, you're playing with instruments that are not necessarily, they're definitely not physical in many different ways, although physical instruments do have a relationship with the non-physical instruments that play a rhythm in the composition of life. So this composition of life, people are playing instruments for a composition of a sheet of music that is not their own. It never was their own. That sheet of music was designed to play a rhythm and play an offbeat tempo that allows the individual to cloud out their own experience, to where they don't even know what instrument they're playing anymore. This is why you have no fucking idea what the human experience is. The body is just a bunch of nasty ass, nothing, you know, brain neurons firing off so you can just, you know, have a few babies and have a good job and retire and have a house and get the fuck out of here. Like, how simple is that? Like, how simple, like, as complex as, like, as deep as this experiential vessel is, this, as deep as this spiritual vehicle is, why are we not allowing ourselves to go into what that actually means? Well, because you've been playing music that doesn't give a shit about the spirit or soul side of that vehicle. It only gives a shit about interpreting the vehicle in perspective of reality. And this vehicle, this physical vehicle, is not even close to being understood, understood, and overstood to the depths of what it actually is, because you can't understand the physical vehicle from physical perspectives, because the physical vehicle is just an expression of your higher mind and soul expression, your soul self. So you can't, if you do interpret the physical expression, you will max out at a physical dictionary, at a physical university system. The thing is, these physical university systems, there's two different physical university systems. There's a physical university system that our ancestors were interpreting, that our ancestors were connecting with the stars, the earth, the animals, the sun, the moon, studying the body, studying the relationship to the non-physical. That's one university system that exists that's being hidden. This is why they can't tell you, the system can't tell you that how the pyramids were built, how Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and Cusco, how these places were built, precision cut stone, you know, how did they lift these things, you know, what, how does this relate to frequency, like how these places were built from a spiritual interpretation of this reality, if anything from a higher mind perspective of this reality. Or you shrink it down even further, you have these bogus ass city sort of skyscraper versions of reality that a fucking child could create the blueprints for the way society is existing today. A child could write up the blueprints for how downtown San Francisco is built. You know, how a building like a skyscraper is built. A child could do that shit. But even the university system as a whole cannot interpret what's going on, what went on with our ancestors. They can't, because you will literally start to unveil the difference between the two worlds, which is the alchemy, this black magic. Like I said, the ancestors' university system is one world. It's one way to interpret your reality. Now you have the other university system, which is the black magic university system, that's based upon control, individual parasitism, individual and collective control, dominance. The part of it is the egotistical version of, or the fear, and you know, all this shit that vibrates, that's normal, like this ignorance is bliss mentality, when in the Cometian interpretations of philosophy, ignorance was the ultimate evil, because ignorance on an individual scale, you can enslave somebody, you can control somebody, you can beat somebody for their entire lives, and they will never hold you accountable, because you have mind controlled that individual. You have taken their ability to express themselves for the protection of their own vessel, their own experience. You've beaten them down so much that they not only don't know about the world that exists out there, if they do know about the world, they don't care about it. That's like breaking an animal. When you break an animal, you can tie an elephant to a chair, a little wooden chair with a little piece of rope, and that elephant won't move. This is what's happening to humanity as a whole. We've been broken because we've been broken with the idea of evolution. We've been broken with the idea of worshiping technology as the evolutionary peak of humanity. We've been broken with the idea of the university system, this black magic control grid version of the university system, as the evolutionary peak of our intellect. This is why, and until we make a conscious connection, a conscious relationship back to our ancestors, none of this cancer and disease ridden experiences that are individual and collective, none of that will be addressed, because we're still fiddling around with the distractions. We're fiddling around with the checker game that's been presented to us by the controllers to begin with. So this is why it's so important to have you constantly distracted on a regular basis every single day through social media, the internet, mainstream news, and so on and so forth. Movies that are coming out annually, monthly, weekly. You're in a constant state of mind control. You're being bombarded by mind control every single moment of every single day. And the information itself feels like you're becoming, evolved or woke. This is why you have a woke movement or awaken, enlightened movement, the new age movement, that whole bullshit. You have that in order to allow people, like I said, it's a pressure relief valve, to make it seem like they're doing something, but they're not. They're doing something that has been prepositioned for them. So it's like getting a little, it's like going into the underground or going onto the roof of the mind-controlled university system. It's still not connecting with the ancestral university system. You might have gotten out of that mind-controlled university system of modern society, but you didn't really, you're not going to allow other people, you're not going to be able to get into the ancestral university system until you demolish the mind-controlled university system that's in and outside of you. So what happens in the new age, or these so-called conscious or woke communities, is that what people are doing is, yeah, you might have broken out of the doors that are keeping you inside the university system, but and moving up in some kind of way, or moving down, whatever you want to call it. Like you can break into the ceiling, or you break into the roof, or break into the basement. It's the same thing. You're still fucking around with that original mind control university system, and you haven't demolished it yet. You're still the same person that you were, because the person that you were, you're not going to be the person that you are until you destroy the person that you were, because the person that you were is not who you were or are in the first place. It's a reflection of what the mind control tells you you were or are. So you have to destroy a part of yourself in order to become whoever it is that you're going to be. And these in-between ass movements, like the New Age movement, so factions of the conscious community, even like the flat Earth community, is the same sort of thing. It's a better example of that. They're not really trying to break down and destroy the university system and all the other mind control programs that come along that are spawned off of that university system. They don't really give a shit about that. They're caught up in the egotistical interpretations of flat versus globe, or let's just face this, one move at a time. They're still playing checkers, and they're still fucking around with the university system as if it had any credibility in the first place. The fact that it exists, the way that it exists, sitting on the blood and the bones of the indigenous people, is inherently inhumane. So if you give any kind of human connection or credibility to this system, you've already started out on the wrong foot, and you got one step in the door to, yes, probably getting out of that university system, but you're just escaping into the roof of that university system or the basement. You're not doing shit for the actual system itself, the foundation itself. You're not going to be, the system is not broken. The system was meant to be the way exactly it is right now. It was never broken. It was made to go to war. It was made to use oil to conquer these lands. It was made to use mind control propaganda like 9/11 to go steal the poppy fields and create more drugs. This is the government doing these things, and the government is just a very generalized expression of what's going on the mind control, like your spiritual mind control and your higher mind control. See, just going to war is just one expression. It's not to say that it's any less or less important. It's equal on every level. What the point is, if you're not even aware of the higher mind control and the spiritual warfare, the spiritual mind control, then you're going to be spinning your wheels in the university system of materialism and the black magic alchemy that has been promoted by this system, these parasites, for so long. So this is why I really don't give a shit about, what's going on, whether or not people are getting like Anthony Bourdain and whoever other people, these suicides that are going on in mainstream. How many hundreds of thousands of people are killing themselves every day? All these veterans, weekly, hundreds of veterans weekly that are killing themselves. And people are pissing their pants over Anthony Bourdain. You're missing the whole fucking point. You've been sucked in to the distraction grid. And people who are making videos and all this, they're actually keeping it alive. Like, I'm not going to say I'm any separate from that. I'm doing the same thing, but at least I'm bringing an awareness to it rather than trapping people in it. Just like kind of, and that's relative too at the same time, but consciously trapping people in something is different than bringing awareness to something and, creating a space where people can jump out of that trap. There's two different worlds and two different styles. Whereas somebody like Alex Jones is consciously trapping people in order, because his intention is to protect what he's saying is a broken system. When I said it's not a broken system, it was built this way, Alex Jones doesn't think that way. And everybody else in those conspiracy fields, they don't think that way. They think this system just needs to be fixed. That's why he teamed up with Alex Jones or Donald Trump. That's why they have this Make America Great Again. That's why they have this patriotic interpretation of what's really going on. The patriots versus the globalists. They're playing a fucking video game on a checkerboard and never at all going into the three-tier chess game. It's meant to keep you trapped. It's meant to keep you in that spinning wheel consciousness. So, and that happens individually and collectively. Alex Jones is just an interpretation of how it happens or how it's expressed collectively. Whereas the individuals who are caught up in that ball of confusion, they give him the strength. They give him the attention. They give him the credibility to continue to evolve that mind control program to affect the collective. So it's the people who are investing their energy. Just think of if all the people tomorrow thought, realized that Alex Jones was a total government agent paid to, as much as everything that he's done. At one point, people are going to realize this, because it's not a thing that is just like, oh yeah, this is just an opinion. Nah, fuck that. It's obvious. One of the biggest things that's going on right now is the conscious, the willful ignorance of the indigenous storyline, which is the human storyline. So Alex Jones keeps you from questioning that by going or even realizing the importance of that. It's another form of hopelessness and powerlessness. He keeps you from going to challenging that reality by amplifying the importance of a patriotic, Make America Great Again perspective of what's going on. So all of that information that he's shared about the gay frogs and, Bohemian Grove and all that, you think that shit just happened on accident? You think they just gonna let him run around for 20 fucking years yelling and spouting off all that shit when they already done killed Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and everybody and anybody else that came close to even talking about challenging the very system that isn't broken? It's meant to be this way. No, the people who are keeping this program alive, they will remain. They will be promoted. They will be spoken about by like Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert has that character whatever. He has an Alex Jones character that mocks Alex Jones. That's late night talk show. That's basically the mainstream narrative with a bow on it. If you think that he's not part of that shit, then See, the people who are not part of that shit are the people who are going to, if they have the opportunity, they will take that opportunity to burn that shit down in that very moment. But he never takes that opportunity. He burns. He's a controlled burn. That's what Alex Jones is. He's not interested in burning that mind control alchemy world down. He's not about burning that universe down. He's about controlling the burn to make it look like something changed or some things are changing. But ultimately, the system wasn't really affected by that controlled burn. If anything, it was actually benefiting that system. That control burn benefited that system, because now with that control burn, what do you think they're going to do? Just like gentrification, they're going to build something on that foundation that was just burned. That's what Alex Jones and all these, even the New Age community, that's what they represent. The New Age community represents, burning down one version of interpreting your reality in order to be replaced by another mind-controlled version of that reality. It's just the same thing in a different suit. So people are doing this consciously and unconsciously. Whether they know it or not, they're limited by their own information, their own research, their own consciousness. So people who in like the flat earth community, a lot of them are limited by their own consciousness because they have this big bright future of realizing what's going on because of flat earth, and this is the biggest lie of all. Well, if there's that big of a lie going on, you have to be an ignorant ass motherfucker to think that that's the only big lie that's out there, and that's the only lie that's affecting people. No, there's very many different lies that are in and around the same bigness of, lying to you about the very nature of your physical reality that involve from a higher mind perspective or a soul perspective. Think about that. If realizing the earth is not a globe, physically is not a globe, is one form, one lie, one form of mind control in the physical realm, what kind of lies and mind controls do you think exist in this reality from the non-physical realm, from the perspective of the higher mind? What lies exist in the interpretation of this reality from the physical to the non-physical? What lies are we being told there? See, they even have a contingency plan for that with this whole simulation theory. Simulation theory is being promoted even through the flat earth community. See, what happens is that in reference to the controlled, or in reference to flat earth being a controlled release, you're going to have empty people. They're not going to jump into the fucking Bible right after they find out about flat earth. Some people will. Some people will dive deep into that shit and think that's all of their answers. Nothing wrong with that. Do all you want to do on those stepping stones. But ultimately, you're going to have a lot of empty ass people because you don't have a university system anymore. You don't even have flat earthers that you could trust because they're dealing with their own shit. They haven't even started to ask questions outside of the physical reality. They're still just, farting around in this McDonald's version of interpreting what the not globe, alchemy really is. They don't know. No connection with the ancestors, no power, no strength, no roots, no nothing. You have empty ass people. So when you have empty ass people, which from the governmental perspective of mind control, they're very well aware of this. What the fuck do you think they're going to do with those empty ass people? They're going to fill those empty people with another form of mind control fuel. So you have transhumanism, you have simulation theory, you have CERN, quantum mechanics, astrophysics, astrophysics, all these, pre-positioned mind control programs that are telling you constantly that the university, or at best, in giving them the benefit of the doubt, at best, their interpretations of this universe are broken. So now they just have to fix their interpretations of this universe. And what happens when you trust that, which is what's happening with these top brass mainstream flat earthers? When you give them the benefit of, having any sort of benevolence in their reality or in their existence, when you give them that credibility, you're giving them the power to set up another mind control program. And until you challenge the very nature of who and what the system is, you're just going to be addressing the system as if it's broken. It's not broken. It was meant to be this way. So if it's meant to be this way, then you have to empower yourself to find out what your system is. What's the natural system? This is why the ancestral interpretations of reality have to be demonized, primitive, savage. They're dancing around fires and telling stories. They don't even write down their history in books. These primitive and savage people. Then why the fuck did they burn all their information? Why did they take all that information and hide it in the Smithsonian Museum? Why did they take all this information from the indigenous, primitive, and savage people and hide it underneath the Vatican? And hide it in all these museums and hide it in all these university systems, telling you that they're researching it. No, they're not fucking researching it. They're hoarding it so you don't fucking see it. So you don't start to piece together these symbols that allow you to challenge the very nature of this reality overall. So that's existing from the intellectual mind control program. Whereas in the physical reality, they have to maintain your emotional triggering, your emotional body. That's the gateway to mind control, the physical reality, is to trigger your emotions. So they put all this suicide stuff out there with Anthony Bourdain and all these people who are going to potentially, if Anthony Bourdain was going to put out any information that's going to expose the system, is he going to come from the perspective of the entire system being broken? No. But at the same time, if he was giving him that benefit of the doubt, if he were to do that, then it will affect the system in some kind of way. And like I said, this is a chess game. They will knock your ass off the fucking board if you have enough pull. And if you have the power to completely burn all this shit down, you will be removed because you're just another individual in there playing in this game. The thing is, how far will you go? How far, information-wise, like how far are you going? How far have you gone? And what are you really talking about? Are these mainstream flat earthers a threat to the system at all? Fuck no, they're not. They're a benefit because they're desensitizing the lie of the universe. By playing this flat earth radio talk show game, they're desensitizing the lie of the reality. And when you are desensitized into that style of consciousness, you are now more a part of the problem than the system to begin with, because you are a live stream version of future mind control programs. I'll say that again. When you haven't done the work, when you are desensitizing consciously or unconsciously, that's why I said these are equally dangerous. Consciously or unconsciously, desensitizing people from the depths that we all need to go in order to challenge the system, to challenge the cancer. See, people like flat and mainstream flat earth, they're basically chemotherapy nurses. They're chemotherapy doctors. They're not, at best, they're hoping to put, the poison in reference to, heliocentrism, the poison that is flat earth, into the globe earth, and hopefully the cancer will die. Well, the cancer is not limited to flat versus globe. The cancer is a human cancer. The cancer is a higher mind cancer. The cancer is a soul cancer. And if you're limiting yourself to a physical interpretation of what's really going on here, then you are either consciously or unconsciously setting up the people to limit themselves and jump right into the next mind control program, whatever that may be. And you might not even be consciously doing that, but you are setting it up by desensitizing them. Oh, it's just, and talking shit. Like, and see, it's been shut down. It's been quieted down from what it was about 2 or 3 years ago, when I was, addressing these, flat earther channels directly and being like, man, fuck them. They're not really talking about anything on the human story. Like, what's more important? The lie of humanity being, locked into this space of lack of critical thinking to where they then believe that they're part of a heliocentric universe? Or is it just, get angry and get mad at the people who, still believe in the globe, or, or selling the globe like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye? Which is more important? It's a trap. It's a fucking trap. It's no different than Black Lives Matter or the Civil Rights Act. Is there validity there? Of course there is. Is there information that needs to be shared? Of course there is. There's information that needs to be shared in all of this. That's the pressure relief valve that I was explaining before. But if you submit yourself or subject yourself to the limitations of prepositioned mind control programs, you're done. You're jumping into another box. And that's why I said, I'll loop it back to the beginning where I said that these communities, these are boxes. They're boxes of limitations. The mainstream narrative is an inherent box of limitation that is designed to affect your relationships, to affect your movement, your revolution, your intellect, your soul, your body, everything. Everything is affected. This is a very intelligent system. Like I said in previous videos, this is some gangster ass shit. Like this heliocentric universe and colonialism and trapping souls. That's some gangster shit. From a soul perspective, that's some gangster ass shit. Some gangster shit to create colonialism, to step out there and push that, to be like, no, we're superior. You're just a fucking primitive little savage, man. Fuck you, bitch. It's about white power. What the fuck you talking about? We're gonna take all these. We discovered this shit. Shut your fucking mouth. We discovered this. Give a fuck about you, you primitive ass. Look at you shooting a bow and arrow. We got guns and bombs and cannons and shit. You could easily. We are more evolved than you. If that is what makes them more evolved than the indigenous people, then what God are they really a part of? That's the infrastructure of the entire university system. This colonial, mainstream, modern society is praying to a God of destruction. Their evolutionary interpretation of humanity is based upon destruction, death, control, manipulative alchemy, black magic, separation from the spirit, separation from nature. That's just across the board. That's it right there. So where the fuck is your humanity? It doesn't exist if you subject yourself to that reality. That mainstream narrative consciousness. It doesn't exist. Like I said, you call yourself white. What the fuck is that? People are, talking about, oh, I'm human, and we have a creator, and we're all this and we're all that. So what are you? Oh, I'm just a white person. What the fuck is that? Well, you know what? Just do a little bit of fucking research, and you'll see what that actually means. White. It was created to build an army, psychologically, spiritually, and physically. That terminology. It was created to unify the so-called settlers of the European nations in the Americas as one entity, which inherently separates you from who and what you are. The kicker to that is that everybody else is primitive and savage. So if you are still calling yourself white, you are still participating in the mind control programs of white supremacy, of the KKK consciousness. You are adopting that because of your own ignorance or your own laziness. Or if you are a part of that system, you take pride in it. Which a lot of people are taking pride in it, and they have no fucking idea why. A lot of people take pride in white supremacy by taking pride in the way modern civilization is. And they knowingly take pride in the superiority complex of, you know, white nationalism or white supremacy or whatever that is. They knowingly or unknowingly. Some people are on the fence about that. Some people actually definitely still in flat earth, because it's a human thing to work on this. It's people that still think that they are more evolved, even though the system lied, that sits on top of colonialism and supremacy. They still think that that group of people is the more evolved version of humanity. That's the problem that I'm consistently bringing attention to, because it's still alive in the flat earth community when they ignore the human story. I'm not saying I have all the answers for the human story. I'm not saying that we came from here or we did that or where did I'm just not jumping on board a lot of these other systems that are saying, you know, we did this and we're from here and we did that. I don't fucking know. I just have questions. That's it. And that's enough for me. I don't need to be jumping into a I know space if I'm still working on a I don't know space. So what's happening is you have people who they don't even know that world exists. Like these mainstream, you know, top brass flat earthers who are going out to the Salton Sea and still doing all that shit. Yeah, they might mention that the story of flat earth is bigger than that, but by your actions, by you, you know, desensitizing people to what this really means, you're more a part of the problem than you are any kind of solution. In my eyes, obviously that's a very generalized interpretation of what's going on, but fuck it, I don't give a fuck. if I have the ability to fit, I'm feeling that way naturally. It's not like I'm sitting down and holding that line with some like I have to do that. No, I naturally feel like the people who are desensitizing, you know, the interpretations of this heliocentric illusion by just like, you know, making cool hip videos and going out and doing all this curvature tests and all that other stuff, you're setting people up for failure. You're setting people up for some fucked up, you know, next level control. And you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, which is never mind to me, because they're both equally dangerous. However you're doing it, the people who are going to follow you off that cliff are going to follow you because they trust you. They trust you. And that trust is no different than the emotional body triggering that is going on with the mainstream media. It's the same sort of thing. And if you have thousands and tens of thousands of people trusting you and following you, from my eyes, off a fucking cliff, it doesn't matter if you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. The effect will be the same, which is why the system needs these people to continually be promoted and desensitized. They need people to tell what's going on from a political perspective. From a, you know, oh yeah, I'm not trying to break down the modern civilization. I think there are benefits to this. How the fuck can you find benefits to this shit if the foundation that this shit was built on It's sitting on blood and bones. That's not to say, like, obviously I'm using a fucking computer. I use my cell phone. I can drive my car home. Obviously. But that's different. That's like an individual and collective difference. There's a difference there. The difference that we're talking about when we talk about addressing heliocentrism is a systematic change. So when you say there are benefits to this system, you're talking about two different worlds. I'm talking about the human story that needs to burn down the majority of the foundations of this in order to understand who in the fuck we are. Many different ways. But the mainstream flat earth interpretation of, what's going on is like, nah, man, we can just fix it. We don't need to burn anything down. We can just fix what's going on. We'll just hope for the best. And just, I have faith in humanity. You might have faith in humanity, but if you only have faith in humanity and you don't have the acknowledgement or the understanding, understanding, and overstanding of the intelligence, the destructive intelligence that works against humanity, that works against nature, if you don't have the acknowledgement and the respect of that intelligence, you can have all the hope, you can have all the prayers in humanity all you want. It ain't gonna do a fucking thing for the destructive intelligence that lives off of parasiting. That's a new age out of balance, one version interpretation of reality. Oh, just hope for the best. We're all humanity. We're all one. Racism doesn't matter. There are no genders. Culture. Stop looking into your ancestral culture. We come from the Pleiades. We come from the Orion galaxy. We're star seeds. We're connecting with our alien brethren. You're already creating another mind control program when you haven't even healed yourself from the previous mind control program. And you're creating another mind control program in order to cope with the person that you used to be, in order to cope with escaping from that world, in order to cope with the fact that that world still exists. And that's what's happening right now. People are building all of these coping mechanisms around themselves and never really doing the work. They're only doing like a Facebook post version of the work and not really doing the work that needs to be done. But it looks like it's being done. It seems by other people like it's being done. That's what, like Flat Earth on YouTube. It looks like it's changing. Okay, well, when it actually changes, meaning when the destructive intelligence starts to really address what's going on. Right now, they're just laughing at people right now. They're laughing at the idea, biding their time. Once the system finally does, take it head on, now what? Now what you gonna do? Where are you gonna go? Where's your conviction? What are your goals? What is your version of what change actually is? Once the system, let's just say tomorrow, and I've said this before, once the system totally acknowledges and accepts that the heliocentrism was a giant lie, and let's say they start putting people in jail, or whatever they're gonna do, changing things here and there, you think they're not going to have a contingency plan for that? And if they do, what are you going to do? Now, if you are going to wait for them to do whatever it is they're going to do, and then wait for them to make their contingency plan, to activate that contingency plan, you're playing checkers. If you are doing that, you are playing checkers in a 3-tier chess game. You're not even in the realm of playing chess. This is what the DC, and see what happens is that when people get tired of playing checkers, they start to desensitize themselves and build themselves up. This a perfect example of that is the potato show. They don't know what to do. They have no fucking clue what the heliocentric deception actually means from a human perspective, because they've never gone into the human story. So once they are faced with that insecurity, once they are faced with that emptiness, once they are faced with that change, okay, when they look at heliocentrism from a human perspective, it's begging of them to change themselves, to change their own interpretations of reality, to change their interpretations of history, the past, the present, and the future. And that requires change of the self. And in order to ignore and avoid that change, which is the hardest thing to do for an individual to change themselves, to acknowledge that they need to change, in order to ignore that and to divert attention away from that, they have to build up an entire empire, an entire castle that's based upon appearing to move forward, appearing to evolve the consciousness, appearing to being, some kind of awakened being or some shit like that. And they'll wake up every morning just jump starting that appearance over and over and over again. And then it just becomes this repetitive nothingness that has no goals, has no kind of, no kind of ways to address this destructive intelligence. It's just yelling. It's empty. It's like a baby. Like I said, it's the emotional body attachment. That's it. And since we are so used to that, by being used to TV shows and used to politicians and used to cartoons and used to the radio, we're used to that empty sort of, it's kind of like people who can't fall asleep unless they have the TV on, or can't even be in a room unless they have the TV on. It's a vibration. It's a frequency. The potato show puts off that frequency. It puts out that television vibration of the old world, sprinkled in with this new intelligence of, a not heliocentric mind control program. But you're still waiting in a waiting room, talking with your friends, having a good time. It's bullshit. So that the way that the potato show affects the flat earth community is the same way that the mainstream narrative affects the collective. It's desensitizing, it's distracting, it's boxing in. Yes, I will give it a little credit in that it is opening or setting, the position for people to think for themselves and open the door, because there's a lot of people who, watch their videos and we're all about that potato, programming. And then all of a sudden they were like, what the fuck is this? Because I did the same thing. I was like, these motherfuckers, these are some fake ass people, man. Fuck this. This is some bullshit. They're not going to the depths, and maybe that's not their job. Oh well. But like I said, consciously or unconsciously, if they are setting up people to, trap themselves, you're still as dangerous, whether you know it or not. And I don't give a fuck. I'm going to say something about it, especially if you are blocking my perspective, which they have many different times in many different ways, consciously. So, fuck that. It's just another, all of these programs, all of these stories that are out there. I don't give a shit about, Trump doing all this stuff. You're not going to be able to do anything about the kids that are being, separated from their children at the border if you are still thinking that this government has any credibility to make those decisions in the first fucking place. There's immigrants making laws and rules separating immigrants, so-called indigenous people from their families. Immigrants making laws and regulations for so-called immigrants who are actually indigenous. They're making rules. And they can only make those rules if you are so weak-minded and desensitized that you allow them to have the illusion of power to make those fucking rules. So if you're not challenging the very essence of this whole Make America Great Again, colonialism, Alex Jones, patriotic versus the globe, if you're not challenging that shit, you are allowing it to grow. And if you're not, at least internally, looking at that as a threat to nature and humanity, no different than heliocentrism is a threat to you having a relationship with nature and humanity and your creative essence, your soul, your most high connection, whatever it is that you want to call it. If you're not making those connections, you're spinning wheels. And like I said, you're actually as dangerous as the mainstream narrative. No matter how many people, the majority, like I said, the majority of people who are going to trap them, they're going to trap themselves in your mind control, radio, talk show, potato show programming. That's the majority of people because that's what's comfortable. That's the emotional programming. See, when they play this, let's just be nice to each other. We're all the same. Everything is just hunky-dory, and we just need to let this flat earth information get out. Look, the news stations are talking about it. Look, skeptics are going out to the Salton Sea and doing tests. Ooh, things are changing. Okay. We know who the fuck you are. And that system, like I said, I'm not really paying too much attention to it because just like the mainstream media, that shit is dying. If it's not dead already. And the only way it's staying alive, just like the mainstream media, is because you have these half and misinformed assholes who are either new to the flat earth information or who have completely bought into that emotional triggering bullshit style of information sharing through the potato show. They bought completely into that, and now it's become a part of them. So now they have to defend the part of them by defending other people, like the potato show, against other people who are not necessarily against them individually. I don't give a fuck about them individually. They ain't shit individually. I'm talking about what they represent, consciously, unconsciously, and on the larger scale of desensitizing people. That's why I bring it up consistently, because it's no different than Alex Jones, TYT, Fox News, RT, MSNBC, and all the other bullshit stations that are out there that are meant to distract you from going into the space of empowering yourself. That's where I'm coming from. That's where I'm saying is my goal, to start helping people empower themselves. You can't empower yourselves just because you're against the globe. That's not a sense of empowerment. That's a sense of reaction. There's no power in reaction. And if there is any power in reaction, it has a limitation. But to empower yourself is an ongoing process that doesn't have limitations. And many of our ancestral consciousness, our ancestral people, have already done this work. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Transhumanism, the New Age program, that's about reinventing the wheel in order to pride itself, in order to worship itself, by reinventing the wheel of interpreting this reality, by understanding, and overstanding this reality. It's another version of colonialism, trying to reinvent the wheel because you're just ignoring what has already been done. You're ignoring the mind control programs that go in keeping people from recognizing the depths of the destruction that come from this destructive intelligence and the depths of the empowerment that people can go once they start to tap into those roots. So those are the two main things that if you're watching any of these videos, that's the intent there, is to have people empower themselves or position themselves in a space of empowering themselves to not only heal, which is step one, to heal. Or step one is actually acknowledging and recognizing that there's healing to be done. Then you start healing. Once you start healing, then you can get into a space, which is empowering in itself, but you can get into a conscious space of empowering yourself through that healing and empowering other people and connecting to the roots and connecting to some of the shit that we haven't even, unveiled yet. We don't even know yet because we're still in the waiting room of ourselves. And if you are busy distracting yourself from just being, egotistically not like the people who are asleep. Oh yeah, we're asleep. What the fuck does that mean? They're asleep and you're awake, but you've just woken up from a nap and went back to sleep in another version of sleep, which is just pride in nothing. Ultimately, if it's in a box, it's nothing because it's just a stepping stone. If it's in a box, a stepping stone inside a box, you can't see that stepping stone until you step in there. That's why I said it's not a bad thing to be, a part of these stepping stones or these boxes, but it can become a bad thing, especially over time, especially if those boxes are going to be utilized to make another empire, to make a new age empire, to make a new world order castle from the perspective of love and light. This is why they got channelers like Cryon speaking at the United Nations. This is why we got people like Oprah, pushing out like Tony Robbins and Eckhart Tolle. Like, the information that they share is on point. But what good is that information if it's just being channeled straight into Oprah in the system that's designed to fuck you over? Same thing with flat earth. Yeah, the information is great. You've been lied to. Great. But what good is it if the flat earth mainstream people are just going to channel that shit straight back into the mainstream narrative? Basically, the Potato Show is the Oprah of the new age of the flat earth, just like the Oprah she's the Oprah of the new age community. She takes the information of Eckhart Tolle and, Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, and whether they are consciously or unconsciously a part of this shit, I don't know, and I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Like I said, she takes that information, she takes that energy, those frequencies, and just, ties it straight back in to she ties it right back into the system, ties it right back into Beyonce. How's that any different than the Potato Show tying it right back into the mainstream media? And like I said, consciously or unconsciously, don't fucking matter. You're equally as dangerous. And the people who are going to fall for that program, fine, go do it. You have to. You have no other choice but to do that. If you stay there until you die, oh well, that's on you. But for the people who are, on the fence about this shit, or, starting to think like, all right, well, what else is there? 3 years have passed now. What are we going to do with this? Those are the people I'm talking to. If you're not one of them, kick rocks. Be about your business. I'm done with all that. But if you're starting to question more and think more, then check out some of the other videos on this channel. Like I said, I'm starting to slow down and, channel my energy into other things, other styles of expression, art, and stuff like that. So these videos won't be as frequent as they used to be. And like I said, there's already a whole bunch on this channel. So if you haven't seen some of the older stuff, it's still pretty much the same. It's gotten more refined over time, and less uhs and less curse words, or or expressive words. I'll say, it's not cursing; it's just expressive language. But it's still there. It's still relevant, and it's all the same story. It's all one story. So that's pretty much what I have with this video. I didn't even really get to go into the dream. I just talked about dream realms as a whole, but I really wanted to express the importance of rhythms, compositions, music in relation to the consciousness of the people, and like what's going on a large scale. Like, there's a rhythm, there's an intellectual, a destructive intellectual focus that is channeled through the mainstream version, the mainstream narrative. It's channeled through there. And it's a style of expressing yourself. It's a style of researching. It's a style of being and connecting. And it's a style. And these styles have leaked over into these new age communities and so-called flat earth community. And it's very, very dangerous. And it's not like it's not supposed to happen. It's going to happen. It's a natural thing that happens. The thing is, the system knows that this natural thing happens, and it very well will use those happenings for its own benefit. And if you don't have people who are empowering themselves outside of the system of disempowerment with the illusion of empowerment, if you don't have people empowering themselves from their own internal roots, from their ancestral roots, from the roots that can't be fucked with, the roots that come from the inside out. If you don't have people empowering themselves from a space outside of this destructive empire, if you don't have people empowering themselves from a perspective outside of the idea that this system is just broken and needs to be fixed, if you don't have people empowering themselves outside of that, they will crumble as soon as the system makes its next move. They will crumble and implode into nothing, and they will disappear, or they will crumble and implode into the next style of mind control, the next style of propaganda. One way or the other. That's what's going to happen to the people on the fence. That's what's going to happen to the people on the other side of the fence who don't even realize that there's a fucking fence there. And that's what's going to happen to the people overall over time if we don't start making these connections deeper than the foundations of this destructive intelligence and this destructive empire that parasites off of nature and humanity. So that's all I had for this video. Thank you again for the support. I will start looking to do different styles, like I said, of information sharing. Might be, doing some collabs with some people here and there to talk about, this perspective. But I'll let you guys know. I'll put something out here and there. So thank you guys again for the support. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.